So, hi everyone, I'm Alex Tichy,
I'm Emily Sanford.
and we're both graduate students here at Columbia University in the Cool Worlds Lab. And today we just thought we were going to talk a little bit about what it's like to apply for graduate school. We'll take you through kind of the whole process, what to be thinking about when you're first start applying for grad school, and then when before application process, during the application process, and then hopefully, once you get accepted somewhere, what to think about during that time. Yeah, where should we start? Yeah.
I don't know. We could start with before.
It's a good place to start.
I do want to just jump in. I didn't decide that I was a physics major until I think summer after my sophomore year. Like I didn't take introductory physics until my sophomore year. So I was successful in grad school applications. I'm here now. You don't have to know what you want to do going into college. Obviously, if you know off the bat, that's great. You can make a plan early, but it's not a problem if you're not sure what you want to do immediately.
Yeah, that's a great point. In terms of like what to kind of be thinking about beforehand, for grad school, I think a real thing that a lot of people are looking for is research experience.
Yes.
This is something that a lot of people pay a lot of attention to during the application process. So I did, for example, I worked as a research intern at the American Museum of Natural History. I was an undergraduate student here in New York City, so that was a great experience that obviously not a lot of people get to have. So I was very fortunate to be able to do that. And then I worked as what's called an REU. This is Research Experience for Undergraduates. I did that at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory in New Mexico. So I had a couple of research experiences. You don't have to have all of that necessarily, but that's sort of my background, and you did some too.
I did, yeah. So the summer after my sophomore year, I did an REU also at the American Museum of Natural History here in New York. And then from then on, I joined the lab of one of the astronomy professors at my undergrad institution, and I worked with her the following spring semester, summer, and then all throughout my senior year. I realized that not every undergrad institution has an astronomy department at all, if you're interested in astronomy. And there may only be a handful of physics professors. And so I think that the secret for grad school applications is not to like freak out if you can't get direct hands-on research experience at your own institution or whatever. It's just to avail yourself of all the opportunities that you do have. I think that's really what admissions committees are looking for. They want to see your enthusiasm about the subject. They want to see that you're going out and trying to learn as much as you can. Like whatever you're able to do, whatever your home institution can offer you, don't panic if you don't have those opportunities. Although REUs are open for people around the country to apply. I think specifically U.S. citizens because it's an NSF.
Yeah, for NSF. Not of course there are REUs that are not through the NSF,
Yes.
but the NSF has a great website where they list all of these different opportunities for you. So you definitely check out that list and kind of start thinking about where you might like to apply. There's two great points. One that I think a lot of people don't understand is that these research experiences are not necessarily expecting you to know all of these things ahead of time.
No.
Before I started astronomy research, I was like, well, I've never written any code. I don't know how to do all of these things.
Yeah.
And that's the expectation really, is that you will learn those things. And then the other thing about these NSF REUs is that at least some of these programs are really trying to look for students who don't necessarily have
Yes.
great research opportunities at their home institution. So.
Yes.
The undergrads here at Columbia, for example, there's a lot of astronomy professors that they have an opportunity to work with, but many schools they fully recognize do not have those same sort of opportunities, and so the REUs are sort of trying to bring in people from those schools to give them some of those opportunities.
So apply for this stuff. Definitely. Don't worry if you don't have experience already. As a sophomore, as I said, I just taken intro physics. I had no astronomy background. There's no harm in applying. There's nothing to lose. You should try to, if this is what you want to do, then go for it.
Yeah. And they're a lot of fun. So it's usually like 10 weeks in the summer. You go someplace new. I spent the summer in New Mexico. That was a radical experience. It was very cool. Met some awesome people. We went to the AAS conference the following January to present our results there. So I couldn't say enough good things about those. So definitely apply for those. Kind of the other things that you're going to be thinking about, of course, is your grades, you want to keep it up?
Yeah, so I should say I was on the admissions committee here last year, so I've seen kind of the other side of this process now. And grades they matter. It's I think people take grades in combination with the rest of your application, and certainly one poor grade couldn't sink you. That wouldn't happen. But it's another indication that you're dedicated to physics. You want to learn as much as you can. Again, if you didn't know that you wanted to do physics or astronomy at the beginning of your undergrad years, then that's fine. We're not looking for 4 years of straight physics classes. That's not what anyone is expecting. And a track record of steady improvement throughout undergrad looks great.
And would you say that in terms of an application, no single thing is probably going to kill your chances, right? So if you've really got a great application, you're doing everything right, and maybe there's some funny grades in there, that wouldn't necessarily sink you. And I guess the point is, don't let some little strange thing in your pass the grades or whatever necessarily deter you from applying. You should definitely apply to these schools and see what happens. Don't talk yourself out of applying somewhere that you want to go. And then I guess the last thing is sort of these standardized tests that we have to take, the general GRE and as well as the physics GRE. Now a lot of schools are getting rid of the physics GRE. No longer requiring it. So we're actually sort of in a transition period right now, it seems like, where some schools are requiring the physics GRE and others are not. So you'll want to see what is happening there in terms of, each school is going to have different requirements, particularly as far as the physics GRE is concerned. While you're probably going to have some sort of target score in mind that you're shooting for and preparing for. There's a lot of scores floating around on the internet. Some places say they're hard cuts. By the way, I think ETS runs the physics GRE, and they say there should never be a hard cut. We would probably agree that you shouldn't let anything, particularly these scores, deter you from applying to school. If you don't get the score that you're quite looking for, don't let that stop you from applying somewhere.
Definitely not. I think the GRE probably causes more anxiety to undergrads applying to grad school than any other individual aspect of this whole process. Certainly it caused me a lot of anxiety when I was applying, and the undergrads I talk to now are very anxious about it. Among the Columbia grad students who are accepted, who are here now, there's a broad array of scores. We apply no cutoff. And I think many places take your GRE score in the context of the rest of your application, in the context of your grades, of your letters of recommendation, of your personal statement, of your just demonstrated enthusiasm for the subject in the first place. And I realize why this anxiety exists. I mean, it feels kind of deeply unfair that a 3-hour test could have this much impact on your future prospects as an astronomer, but I want you to not freak out. I think the trend in grad schools overall is that it's becoming less important when considered next to the rest of your application. As Alex said, many schools have decided to stop requiring it in their admissions process, and I think the trend is moving that way.
And we'll point out that there's a great resource, a website that's been compiled that has all of these physics and astronomy programs, and they list in one place whether they're requiring it or not requiring it, or it's optional, or they don't accept it, whatever. And just reiterate the point to pay too close attention to whatever kind of score ranges you're seeing online, because all that's going to do is freak you out.
I guess just in general, one piece of advice for gearing up to start the applications. First of all, try to make a plan if you can. If you're kind of leaning towards applying to grad school, start planning for it. I think midway through junior year is a good time to start thinking about getting all these things organized. Not to freak out early or anything like that, because you really won't need to start putting together your application in earnest until the fall of your senior year. But in terms of getting a spot to take the physics GRE, that can be kind of tricky sometimes. It's only offered a couple times a year. So I think in spring semester of your junior year, try to sit down and write down the available test dates and just what information you'll ultimately need to compile to put together your application, just all the various components. And again, this is not to cause any anxiety, but I think ultimately it will reduce your anxiety if you have a plan and you don't approach it kind of starting from squared one in September of your senior year, that can be a really anxious place to be. So
yeah, definitely check out that calendar for the physics GRE,
Yes.
because it really is only offered maybe 3 times a year or something like that. I remember I took it September and October
Yeah.
of my
think so,
senior
yeah.
year. And I had personally wished that I had spaced them out a little bit more, that I had taken maybe one in the spring of my junior year and one in the fall of the senior year. So just look at that calendar and map out what looks best for you.
Another thing you should plan for, I think, for me at least, putting together all the applications was at least another class's worth of work on top of my existing course schedule for fall semester senior year. So if you can, try to space out your courses so that you can have a little break academically in that semester, because otherwise you might be swamped for a little while. And that includes everything. It includes writing the personal statement. It includes hounding professors for letters of recommendation. It includes studying for the GRE and taking it twice, because I also did the September-October strategy. I think now it might be offered a little later. It might be like September, November.
Okay. Yeah, I remember I got my scores from the September test the day after I took my October test, and I kind of wish I had gotten it a day before, maybe. I don't know, whatever. Yes,
There's no good way.
Takes about a month, but
There's no good way.
Yeah, no good way. Anyway, so look at that calendar, and then Emily's sort of been anticipating, moving on to the actual application process. So I think, of the first thing to think about is where you want to apply. There's a lot of considerations that go into that. First of all, just the location. Are you a city person? Do you like the countryside? I mean, New York City, where we are, of course, is not for everyone, but neither is the out in the country. It's great for some people and not great for other people. So that's an important consideration that shouldn't be underestimated.
No.
Just where you're actually going to be living.
And remember, this is going to be like 5 or 6 years of your life if you're going to a U.S. institution. And for many of us, that's like most of our 20s. That's, don't discount that. Grad school can be difficult enough at the best of times. I think everybody goes through periods where it's quite hard, and you want to be living in a place that's not exacerbating any of that stress.
Totally.
You want to be living somewhere where you can be happy.
But then, apart from that consideration, I think, we get into the more academic sort of considerations that you have. What kind of research that they're doing at the school, is that in line with what you're interested in? And by the way, what you worked on maybe in your research experience, your REU, doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with what you're planning to do.
Mine doesn't.
And it's also a lot of times okay if you don't know exactly what you want to work on yet. Now that sort of depends on the department and funding, how they fund graduate students. There's some places, Columbia is very good about, you can pretty much work with anyone that you want to, as long as that person is not swamped with, a million grad students, and they'll find a way financially. But there are other places for which the faculty member, he or she, really has to have money to fund a graduate student.
A lot of times, just a cursory Google search won't be enough to tell you all of the information you need to decide what type of place a school is. Whether these funding considerations in particular, that might not be something that's available online. So I think if you have specific questions about a particular graduate program, don't hesitate to reach out to current graduate students at that program.
We might as well talk about emailing faculty members, which is something that a question comes up quite a bit, whether you should email faculty members. And I think it's sort of, you don't know these people ahead of time, so you don't really know anything about them.
It's intimidating.
And yeah, certainly. And whether or not they want to receive emails or whether they don't want to receive emails, it's, you don't really know. And I guess the best piece of advice is to be specific.
Yeah. Because I think the important thing is to treat this as kind of a sincere process of trying to ask somebody a question. It's like you're reaching out because you want to know a piece of information specifically. You're not just reaching out. I think when you try to reach out just to get your name on somebody's radar, just to like have them have an email from you in their inbox, I think it can come across a little bit insincere sometimes.
That's what I definitely worried about when I was going through this process.
And I think if you do ask a specific question, it won't come across that way at all, because you're asking a question. There's nothing wrong with that.
So I think now we can talk about some aspects of the application, particularly the personal statements and the letters of recommendation.
Yeah. So the personal statement, goal of the personal statement, it'll be a 1 to 2 page document describing kind of your interest in astronomy, what you've done so far that makes you a good candidate for a grad school admission, and also what you are hoping to do in grad school, and to kind of connect your research interests with the particular program you're applying to. Each statement you submit requires a certain degree of customization, tailoring to your particular school of interest, which isn't to say that you have to overhaul the entire thing every time you apply to a new program, but you should try to connect what your particular astronomical interests are to what goes on in a particular department. And it's not just kind of an annoying exercise to do that. It really will help you clarify your thinking about why you're applying to particular schools. And I think you should look at it as an opportunity to see why your research focus, like how it could fit in with a particular department, and who you'd like to work with, and why.
Totally. Yeah, and it's worth keeping in mind that different schools are all going to have different requirements. Some are going to be 500 words, 1,000 words, or something like that. I remember at least one time it totally caught me off guard. I thought I was doing something different. So I had sort of different versions of the same personal statement where I could kind of expand on things or really cut it down. And one thing I would say about it is, or maybe a couple of things. One, I remember feeling very uncomfortable about bragging on myself. You do kind of have to brag on yourself in a way, but I would encourage you to look for ways that you feel comfortable talking about the things that you've done. You've probably done some really cool things, and there's maybe a way that you can talk about it, saying, "Oh, I was very proud to have this opportunity. I was very fortunate to work on this thing," without saying, "I'm amazing because this, and I also did this, and I also did this." And then one thing that I think about personally, I don't hear many people talk about this, so maybe this isn't a great idea, but I got to grad school, right? So whatever, take it as you will. I took my personal statement as an opportunity to actually kind of talk about what I think, and not entirely about I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. You probably have some sort of thoughts about how astronomy research ought to be done, or where you think the field is going, where it should go. And this is your opportunity to kind of not just tell people what you've done, but also kind of what's going on in your brain. I think people really enjoy reading something that's speaking from person to person.
If you're uncomfortable bragging about yourself, as I suspect many of us are, I mean, you don't want to write a personal statement that you cringe reading about yourself.
Right.
I think one way, and this ties in with the rest of what you were saying, is to brag almost about your enthusiasm for this subject.
Totally.
As much as your accomplishments. I mean, it's important to let your accomplishments come across. Don't hide those things. But what people are looking to see in an applicant is genuine enthusiasm for astronomy.
So we said personal statement, you have to do some writing, and then you have to ask other people to do writing on your behalf. This is, of course, the letters of recommendation that you'll get from professors and hopefully research advisors. They definitely, it'll be 2 to 3 depending on the school usually. And again, those are requirements that you want to look into ahead of time. So the first thing about letters of recommendation is that you just kind of want to line them up, fairly well in advance.
Get that ball rolling quickly in your fall semester, senior year.
Absolutely.
Or, I mean, if you're working with someone and you're younger and you're watching this video, if you're a junior, or if you've just wrapped up a summer research project maybe, you can ask an advisor to write a letter for you and keep it on file while you're kind of fresh in their memory before they go through a whole other semester or school year of doing their own thing and working with other people. Most people will be happy to do that.
So yeah, you want to make sure, for one thing, that they can give you a good recommendation.
Don't be afraid to ask that.
Every now and then someone writes a letter of recommendation and it's very sort of tepid, and that's not, people. It catches people's attention, maybe even more than when they see a million, this is the best person I've ever seen, or something like this, and then if there's something that just seems a little tepid, that's going to sort of raise red flags for people.
So,
probably.
Ask your potential recommenders if they feel comfortable writing you a letter, and in general, most people will say yes, I'm happy to do that.
And the more specific they can be about you, the better. If you've if you've been in a lecture hall of 400 students, maybe you were the outstanding student in that class and they really remember you. You were sitting in the front row and you were raising your hand and answering all the questions or coming to their office hours or something like that. Just because you were in a big class doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad choice.
No.
But you want to make sure that that professor really can say specific things about you.
And your recommenders don't have to be like professors at universities. I mean, in general, they should be related to physics and astronomy. But if you worked with a postdoc, if you worked with a research scientist, like the title professor isn't the important thing here.
So that, almost covers it as far as the application goes. You'll fill out some personal information, your essay, your personal essay, and then the recommenders. Sometimes there's additional supplemental essays. I remember Columbia had a diversity statement that was optional. So different schools might have individual requirements like that. And of course there's the fee, the application fee that many places require. I bring this up here because there are a lot of fee waiver programs. And so particularly if it's expensive applying to grad school, there's no doubt, between paying for the general GRE, paying for the physics GRE, paying for those scores to be sent out, and then paying the application for these fees, it can really add up. And so if this is a burden for you, it's certainly a burden for a lot of people. Don't be bashful about looking for fee waiver programs, and maybe contact the department. Sometimes it's run through the school, sometimes the individual department will have fee waivers.
I think I can speak for Columbia at least when I say that we don't want anyone not to apply because they feel they can't afford it. And so there's programs to waive the application fee for the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences here, which is administered through the university. And then this upcoming year, for the first time, if you check out the Columbia admissions website, there's an opportunity to apply for a waiver for the physics GRE as well. So please, we'll put the link in the video description or somewhere.
So we'll kind of move on to the final stage, which is, hopefully, it's all sent out, it's out the door. By the way, these applications tend to be due sometime early, or usually mid-December to mid-January is roughly the timeline for most of these places. And then you will hear from them by February or March or something like that.
Mid-February through early March, I'd say, is prime time.
The wait lists, maybe we should talk a little bit about wait lists.
Yeah. When's the deadline for matriculation is April 15th? That's
something like that.
Everybody has to make a decision by April 15th.
Right, that's universally acknowledged. So that's the sort of the hard line. I'll say that I was waitlisted here at Columbia. And certainly a nerve-wracking time because I really wanted to come here, and I wasn't sure. So in terms of navigating that, I reached out to a few professors here and made it clear to them that I was most interested in coming to Columbia. More than anything else, it was my top priority. That sort of enthusiasm is, you don't want to pester these people again, but making it clear to people in the department that you really want to come. That's
useful information to admissions committee people specifically. If you're very enthusiastic about a program and you're waitlisted, telling the admissions committee, like, if I were accepted, I would certainly attend. That's useful information for them to have. They don't want to make a bunch of offers that are then rejected. Sometimes it'll happen that some people will get many offers of admission. They can only accept one, obviously. And as people make their decisions, then that spaces open up. And that's why none of this is really over until April 15th.
Right. I think
especially if you're waitlisted.
I got accepted early April or something like that. So I was really sweating it, but it came through, and I reached out to people. I didn't pester them, but I made it clear that Columbia was really a high priority for me. But let's set that aside and consider the case where you just get accepted. You get accepted somewhere, maybe a few places, maybe a lot of places. But typically what happens at that point is that the departments, again, depending on resources of the department, but they will try to bring you in usually and show you the campus, and try to win you over to coming to their school.
Oh, how the tables turn at that point.
That's right. Then you are the coveted one. They want you. Those visits are very important to take advantage of if you're considering a place. You really do want to see it.
You should see it, yeah. I think it's hard to form an opinion about a place just based on their website or based on emailing a few professors. I think coming and visiting, talking to grad students, asking them what they like and don't like about their program. This is just information that's difficult to get except in person. So
Right.
visit if you can.
But you'll be there for a couple of days, have a lot of meetings with a lot of professors.
It'll be
They'll tell you-
exhausting.
they'll
It'll be completely exhausting.
Yeah. They'll tell you all about what they do, and take you out to dinner, wine you and dine you.
You'll
know,
maybe
all
go
those
out to
sorts of
coffee
things.
3 or 4 times per day.
So when there's no rush. You've got until mid-April. But if there are places that that you know that you're not going to, it's a good idea to go ahead and let those departments know, because they probably do have waitlisted students that they're trying to bring in. So the sooner that you know, okay, I've got some great options over here, and between these 3, I know it's going to be between these 2 and not this one over here, go ahead and let them know. You don't have to, of course, but it's a very nice, considerate thing to do for some other unknown student out there who's waiting for that offer of admission. So I think that kind of covers it, the whole process, and obviously we went through it, and we're still here. It's a daunting thing.
Yeah, it really feels much harder than college admissions did.
So best of luck to you. I hope you can survive this season. It's coming up now. Of course you will survive it. I don't have to say I hope you will survive. You definitely survive it. And all will be well, and best of luck in these endeavors. As always, if you have questions for us, you can leave them in the comments. We'll do our best to address those comments. And so once again, I'm Alex Ticci.
I'm Emily Sanchez.
And we've been happy to talk to you, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks very much.
Welcome back to grad school with grad students.
Between 2 ferns.
Can we say some dumb shit for the bloopers?
Son of a bitch.
Oh.
I can't do it. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.